It's Thursday, December 8th. The last attack on this building cemented Hitler's power grab. Did Germany just stop Reichstag 2.0? We start here. A massive raid allegedly uncovers a plot to overthrow the German government.
Conspiracy theories and ideology, according to prosecutors, basically similar to QAnon.
Why a country that once exported violence now fears American-style militias. The Supreme Court considers what your state legislature should be able to get away with.
This is a theory with big consequences.
We'll break down what it means for future elections. And climate change is affecting future generations before they even leave the womb.
Not so much about climate change at large and about polar bears. It's about how do you protect you and your baby?
The alarming links between global warming and pregnancy. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. When insurrectionists attacked the Capitol on January 6th of 2021, it was a distinctly American moment. People were pouring over barricades, waving Confederate flags. Some were using the stars and stripes to attack police officers.
They took the shields, they took the sticks!
Inside and outside the building, demonstrators were repeating wild-eyed conspiracy theories as fact.
We will never let our country go to the globalists.
Burn him out!
Burn out, burn!
And yet we know that in other countries, members of other far-right extremist groups have also spouted off similar messages. Some have dreamed of starting their own insurrections against their governments. And yesterday morning, people in Germany reacted in horror as they learned what some of their own neighbors were capable of plotting.
The suspected terrorist group uncovered today was founded based on coup d'etat fantasies and conspiracy ideologies.
In a multi-pronged raid spanning more than 100 homes, German authorities clamped down on what they're now describing as an attempted coup in the making. Let's take you straight to Berlin this morning. ABC's foreign correspondent Tom Sufi Burridge is standing by. And Tom, I think that's what's important to understand here. This wasn't the police raiding some hotel room with a few bozos in combat boots. This was far larger, it sounds like.
Brad, this was absolutely huge. This spread right across Germany, involved thousands of police officers.
Geht weg. Ja, wir gehen schon.
Prosecutors here in Germany are saying they've broken up this network of far-right extremists that basically were planning to storm the Bundestag, the German parliament, here in Berlin.
Based on the information we have, this group is set up into a kind of council, which is supposed to be a kind of government organization, which was split up into different departments, just like the cabinet of a country.
The network allegedly involved former members of the German military, and some of those reportedly being investigated include a former judge and a former MP, a member of parliament, a current active member of the military.
Apart from this council, which aimed to build a new state structure, we believe there is a military arm. This military arm aims to set up a new German military, consisting of homeland security units yet to be built.
Prosecutors are saying that a not very well-known German aristocrat who goes by the name of Prince Heinrich the 13th, that's how he's described in the German media, he is alleged to have been one of the key ringleaders of this plot. The group were, according to prosecutors, planning to take over government ministries and try and install this sort of low-ranking German aristocrat, at the head of a new state. And they were following conspiracy theories and ideology, according to prosecutors, basically similar to QAnon, the American group linked to January the 6th.
Well, and it sounds like one of the things that made it so scary was that this group was armed in a country in which it is very difficult to get arms. And here you had people who obviously had clearances to do so in a lot of cases. Do we have a sense of how far this alleged plot got?
Well, on the one hand, German prosecutors are saying that this was planned to be a violent coup. I mean, they use the word planned homicides in their statement. The caveat, though, is that prosecutors are also saying that it's still not clear at this stage how advanced the plans were. government ministers here in Berlin saying that the investigation now needs to run its course, and that will establish how advanced the plans were.
Because usually in a coup, you think you need to have the military behind you. You need to be able to shut down comms. You need to be able to do all these advanced things. But it does sound extra scary than when you say there were current and former members of the military involved in this plan.
Well, I think, the wider context here is that Germany has had a problem with far-right extremists infiltrating state institutions.
In August of 2020, protesters stormed the steps of Germany's parliament building, shouting, "Betrayers of the people."
There was a report out a few months ago by the German Interior Ministry, which identified more than 320 cases of far-right extremists infiltrating the police, the military and the security services here. And it's a growing problem.
Allegedly, they were planning to storm the parliament. I mean, how does that make you feel as an MP?
Obviously very worried, because one of the members of this group was a parliamentarian before for the right-wing party, the AfD.
We spoke to a German MP. She says more needs to be done. The German Interior Minister saying that they're going to have to bring in new laws quickly to root out all of these far-right extremists that are inside institutions.
I hope this is a wake-up call for all of those who try to dismiss these discussions as being, a show of non-confidence to our police, because it's not that.
And hasn't been addressed, even though there was this government report, and it's part of the reason, or part of the kind of infrastructure behind this alleged coup.
And Tom, I guess one of the most concerning things is this idea that this might not be a one-off thing, right? German police obviously had their finger on the pulse of this particular attempt, whatever it was going to be. But, I mean, are there more plots like this either in their country or in others?
Well, look, I mean, this isn't an American problem. It's not a German problem. It's a global problem, right? I mean, these conspiracy theory groups are out there. This extremist group called the Reichsbürger group, which means citizens of the Reich, behind this alleged plot. I mean, not long ago in Germany, they were generally thought of as a sort of crackpot movement. Like, they weren't mainstream. They weren't taken very seriously by the authorities.
Members of the Reichsbürger don't recognise the legitimacy of modern-day Germany and insist the larger Deutsche Reich still exists, despite the Nazis' defeat in World War II.
The Reichsbürger group in Germany is believed to have had about 22,000 members not long ago. Its membership might have risen since. The MP we spoke to was sort of, on one hand, she was like, well, part of me thought this was all a bit crazy and sort of fantastical when I saw the details when I woke up. And then she sort of said, well, but then I thought about it, and these are armed, dangerous people potentially coming into the parliament where I work.
I'm pretty sure they would not be able to take over our democracy, but they could have caused some real damage and killed people.
And she said that was alarming and scary.
Right, an unbelievable moment here in Germany and for Germans. Because, again, several states, several regions of Germany, these arrests were happening. Tom Sufi-Burridge, there in Berlin. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, what do you think would happen to anti-government sentiment here if state legislators started throwing out your votes? It's a question for the U.S. Supreme Court after the break.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
ABC News, America's #1 news source.
The Georgia runoff election represented a huge victory for Democrats, of course, but it also capped a failure almost across the board for election deniers. Herschel Walker was the latest politician who had cast doubt on the 2020 election, losing his own bid for office. The vast majority of election deniers lost. And even when I was asking experts how much damage election denialism could do to election systems in this country, even those experts urged some caution. They said even if someone tries to change election rules, they still couldn't bypass the court system. That's the fail-safe. You disobey election laws in this country, the courts set it straight. But yesterday in Washington,
we will hear argument this morning in case 21.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard a hugely consequential case with the power to fundamentally alter who's in charge of election disputes. Kate Shaw is a constitutional law expert and an ABC News legal analyst. She was in the room for these arguments. Kate, what was this case?
So this case is called Moore versus Harper. It arises out of North Carolina. And the background here is that after the 2020 census, the North Carolina legislature redrew its legislative districts, right? And it engaged in a pretty aggressive partisan gerrymander. So some organizations and individuals filed a lawsuit arguing that this gerrymander violated the state constitution, which has all kinds of protections of things like free and fair elections. The North Carolina Supreme Court agreed that this gerrymander violated the state constitution, and they ordered the districts to be redrawn.
The ruling comes from a 3-judge panel in Wake County Superior Court, and the vote was unanimous. It says the North Carolina General Assembly has 2 weeks to redraw the maps, and they must follow certain nonpartisan provisions.
But the North Carolina legislature, right, which wanted to defend its gerrymandered map, has filed a lawsuit arguing that the North Carolina Supreme Court didn't have the power to invalidate the legislative map.
It's one of the worst things that can happen to our system of government is for folks like these judges to make these kinds of policy decisions behind closed doors.
And it based that argument on what was once a pretty fringe theory known as the independent state legislature theory. And the theory basically says that state legislatures and only state legislatures get to regulate federal elections. So state courts...
Well, like in the Constitution, it says the legislature shall certify the votes. And like that's what they're doing. End of story.
Right. So actually, Article 1 of the federal Constitution says that the times, places, and manner of elections for federal office will be determined in each state by the legislature thereof. So proponents of this theory say the Constitution just says the word legislature. It doesn't say anything about state courts. And so the North Carolina Supreme Court didn't have the power to throw out this map. And this is not an argument that any court had ever accepted, but it's an argument that gained some traction around the 2020 election when a couple of conservative justices on the United States Supreme Court wrote concurring opinions saying things like, it might be a problem if state courts or state executive branch officials have too much power in regulating federal elections because of this constitutional language that we just talked about. But that view didn't command a majority of the Supreme Court. And so when the Supreme Court decided to take this case up at the end of June, there was a lot of concern that what the court was signaling was that it actually was interested in embracing this independent state legislature theory.
Right, that's the thing, because if the court chooses to hear a case, it usually means they want to weigh in on it. If all the other courts so far have said that's bogus, then the Supreme Court wouldn't have to weigh in. So what did the justices say then? Are they down with this formerly fringe theory?
I think that there was less enthusiasm for the theory in yesterday's arguments than a lot of people expected when the court decided to take the case at all. Now, I'm saying the theory as though it's just one thing. What's complicated about this case is that there's lots of different versions of this so-called independent state legislature theory. The most aggressive version of it basically would say, only state legislatures get to set the rules for federal elections. Only state legislatures get to decide how electors for president get chosen. Maybe even only state legislatures can select the electors who, actually cast the state's votes for president. And they don't even have to pay any attention to what the voters of the state have said about who they want to be president.
Oh, like if enough people vote to just be like, actually, we don't feel like voting today. It's up to the legislature. What can you do?
So this very extreme version of this theory basically says that you can hold an election on election day, and if the state legislature is controlled by a group of people who say we don't like the way the people in our state cast their votes, they can just ignore them and appoint their own presidential elector. So that's the really extreme version of the theory. And honestly, I didn't hear a lot of support for that really maximalist version of this theory in court yesterday. So some of the justices had basically no patience for this idea at all. So the newest justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Elena Kagan, were both pretty dismissive of this theory in its entirety.
This is a theory with big consequences. It would say that if a legislature engages in the most extreme forms of gerrymandering, there is no state constitutional remedy for that, even if the courts think that that's a violation of the Constitution.
But actually, Brad, I think what maybe was most important was the skepticism that I heard from people like Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh. These are kind of the swing justices, and they're the ones who are going to make or break this case. And they all seemed pretty dubious.
Why do you think that that's less judicially manageable than, say, deciding whether something is substance versus procedure or an agreement?
They weren't sure how to draw a line between state actors taking steps that are just procedural and steps that are actually substantive. And so you heard a lot of skeptical questions about whether that's a principled line that can be drawn.
And it's setting up the line between substance and procedure.
Which is, as a former civil procedure teacher, I can tell you is a hard line to draw and a hard line to teach students in that context as well.
To the extent that people going into this case thought there was a possibility that in this opinion, the court would say something that would clearly facilitate state legislatures acting as complete rogue actors, unconstrained by state constitutions, maybe even unconstrained by popular will, I don't see a chance that an opinion gets written that facilitates all of that. But if the court says this theory is a real thing, and it does limit what other state institutions can do when it comes to federal elections, that's a really important development, and it could potentially lay the groundwork for these more extreme and more anti-democratic versions of this theory to potentially take hold. Even appearing to approve of this theory could embolden state legislatures, if they are so inclined, to take more aggressive moves, maybe even more anti-democratic moves.
Yeah, and the fact that you had some conservatives like Neil Gorsuch, like Samuel Alito, that basically seemed to say, yeah, this sounds good to us, means that there is an appetite for some version of this. We'll see what kind of new rulings there are going forward. Kate Shaw, thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
The concept of climate change so often feels far away. It's a shrinking ice shelf on the other side of the planet. It's another degree Celsius 40 years from now. But more and more, we see climate change affecting life right in front of our eyes. And recently, it's begun to affect the beginning of life itself and pregnancy.
Those impacts are more widespread and happening more quickly than we had thought previously.
This week, a poll from ABC News and Ipsos showed among Americans 18 to 45 years old, basically parenting-aged people, nearly a quarter of them had reconsidered having kids specifically because of climate change.
I feel like it has changed a lot about what we think of having children and the quantity of the children that we'd have.
And even among people who are pregnant, there are increasing risks here. Let's bring in someone who's watching this play out up close. Dr. Santosh Pandapati is a maternal fetal medicine specialist in Northern California. He works with pregnancies. And Dr. Pandapati, I feel like all the worst dystopia movies start with a worldwide pregnancy issue, right? Handmaid's Tale, Children of Men, like that's when people just start panicking, chaos reigns, the bad stuff starts happening. What is the relationship at this moment in the real world between climate change and pregnancy?
Climate change is a very concerning problem simply because we live in this environment, right? We are not separate from the environment. And what we are seeing more recently is accumulating evidence that rising heat, air pollution, natural disasters, vector-borne illnesses, all are causing increasing harms to pregnancy. And there are specific complications that we're particularly worried about, including higher rates of stillbirth, premature birth, low birth weight, placental abruption, potentially even hypertensive complications of pregnancy.
Children are not mini adults. They have differences in their baseline metabolism and physiology that puts them at increased risk for climate-related diseases.
We have long-term effects on the offspring when they have been exposed in utero to climate events. Higher rates of, for example, diabetes and obesity and metabolic syndrome, higher rates of abnormal behavior and neurodevelopment. This is a concern we have because this is then a intergenerational reverberation of the problem.
And have you experienced this like up close with patients? I mean, are there kind of examples of how one thing leads to another?
We are seeing impacts on pregnant mothers, and it varies depending on, of course, where you live and what the climate event is.
During the 2017 Hurricane Irma experience, I had a client of mine who didn't feel safe to stay in her home, and she decided, along with my family, to make our way up to Georgia. And I realized that pregnancy is not often seen as a special circumstance to pay attention to during a hurricane.
In California, I think pretty much everybody is aware that there has been record droughts. There have been record wildfires.
I have our air quality meter out here, and it's reading at 500, so that's the highest level possible, extremely hazardous.
Even here in the Silicon Valley, we have been exposed to some of the worst air quality conditions globally, almost year after year with wildfires. I've certainly had patients who've had to flee their home with young children while pregnant due to wildfires. We've had patients who have had inordinate exposure to heat waves. I've even seen decreased levels of amniotic fluid during heat waves that raise concern for placental problems.
So you inhale it, it goes through the blood, and apparently you can find some of these particles at the level of the placenta, all right?
So the placenta is what supports fetal growth, fetal development. It's what supports exchange of fluids and nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other gases. What we're starting to see is, for example, particulate air pollution. We're starting to see evidence of black carbon and particulate emissions depositing in the placentas. We know that heat alters placental blood flow, and as a result, destabilizes the placental interface, and that seems to increase the risk of placental abruption.
Well, I got to imagine there's a moment with these mothers in your office who are realizing in real time, like, oh, this would not be happening to me if I was having a kid 20 or 30 years ago. Like, this is a product of my time, this climate. What are those conversations like? And are there any solutions you can offer?
Yeah, we now have to start thinking about this. And so when I start bringing up with patients one-on-one, hey, it's coming up to be summer. These are some of the things that you have to watch out for, especially with the changing climate. Light bulbs go off in pregnant moms' minds. And we do engage in a brief dialogue, not so much about climate change at large and about polar bears. It's about how do you protect you and your baby? How do you protect your family?
The environment that we're living in right now is ever changing, and so we have to make sure that we're doing things and taking steps to protect our health as best as possible.
Do you have access to a cooling center? Do you have access to adequate hydration? Do you have access to masks that will filter out air particulates? Do you have an ability to monitor the air quality? Have you ever noticed that your phone weather app often has an air quality index? Do you ever pay attention to it? Do you have disaster planning in place? If there is a wildfire or some other natural disaster related to the climate, are you ready as a family to be able to deal with that? So when we start talking in these terms, it becomes very tangible. It becomes very real, and this is no longer a distant event. And I've found that that's a very powerful mechanism to really start educating families on how to stay safe.
Right. We talked about Americans who are reconsidering becoming parents because of climate change. These are people who want to be parents, who are on the way to being parents, seeing these complications. Dr. Santosh Pandapati, you can also catch him in a new series from our climate unit talking to ABC's own Ginger Z about how global warming is affecting families. Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you. It was an honor and a privilege to be here.
Okay, one more. And one last thing. Everyone's got someone in their life who seems to have seen everything, right? They've been around longer than you can even comprehend, but none of them have anything on Jonathan.
He's doing fabulously.
Yeah, since we've been feeding him once a week.
That is the sound of Jonathan's handler, because Jonathan is a tortoise who just reached 190 years old.
I think the secret is just being completely chilled and relaxed and not caring about what's happening in the world. I'm not sure about eating grass. I get fed up with that.
On paper, Jonathan is the oldest living thing to be walking the earth right now, the oldest living land animal.
Come on. Oh, I bet you can tell some stories.
He's nearly 500 pounds, and he spends his day in St. Helena, the British island in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. And it's just mind-boggling to think about how old Jonathan is. When he was born, people in his part of the world were just learning about this new nation called the U.S. When he was 50, he was officially documented as a full-size tortoise. When he was 100 years old, he got a visit from this new young English princess named Elizabeth. She came, she learned about this 100-year-old tortoise, and then went off and lived the rest of her life as a queen. She's gone, of course, but Jonathan is still here, munching on lettuce, apples, and cucumbers. He's fully blind, he's lost his sense of smell, but caretakers say he's got all his other faculties, including his hearing, sense of touch, his friendliness, he apparently loves being around people, and his libido.
I have to keep an eye on him when he's doing that, though. Tortoises can fall off and be on their back.
Apparently, dude doesn't discriminate between the male and female tortoises on the island. For that reason, he's also become a gay icon in his old age.
I'll never be a tortoise. I will always be a gay Jonathan. Thank you for representing the community.
He spent his birthday eating salad cake and taking selfies with locals. Not bad for a guy who was alive before the world's first photograph. Also, I should add, we say 190. That is his minimum age. The clock started in the late 1800s when he was given to somebody as a gift. He could be over 200 years old at this point. I had a birthday this weekend. I feel much younger all of a sudden. This was great. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of